I want you to keep in mind that when you create logical expressions, and especially linking logical expressions together, it's always best to make sure your code is as readable as possible. And the reason why I say this is because if you start producing code that's like this, well, even though it will work, we're linking lots of expressions together. Oh boy, it's so difficult to read. So try and limit the number of logical expressions you do link together. Structure your code a little bit differently, where you might use multiple single logical expressions, one after another. Or if you don't want to do that, at least structure your code so it is easier on the eye. For example, we can line things up like this. And so on. I won't keep going, but you get the idea. It's a lot easier to read something like that than the code that we had before. Now this brings us on to the next statement I want us to go through, and that is the case statement. The case statement does a similar job to the if statement, but it has the flexibility to structure our code so it's a lot more readable, but at the same time is limited to one logical expression. Let's take a look at the case statement so it's easier to understand. So we will start a new block of code. Let's have a separator here. And we will begin the case statement with the word case, and we will use the surname and forename fields that we've used previously. So I will write the code first, have a look at the structure of the statement, and then we'll compare it to see how it differs from the if statement. So we have case surname, full stop. Then we include the word when. And this is where we put our values. Let's copy this write statement to save me typing. I'm sure I've got a Jones a little further up. I certainly do. Mr. Jones wins a plane. We'll introduce a new Mr. Green. And Mr. Green, well, he wins the boat. And last but not least, we have our closing when, and we say when others. Then lastly, we end the case statement with end case. So let's pretty it up, get the indenting correct. So now let's go through the case statement again. So the first thing we do is we use the word case and we say case field name. So in our case it's case surname, and we are checking the contents of surname, and we are going to perform an action depending on its value. So we are saying when the surname equals Smith, you've won a car. When it's Jones, you've won a plane. When it's Green, you've won a boat. And anything else with when others, you don't win anything, unlucky. And then we close the case statement. Now personally, I think the case statement is much easier to read than lots of nested and linked if statements. And when we look at the differences with the case statement compared to the if statement, well, just as I mentioned, The case statement can only check one field, whereas the if statement, by using linked expressions, we can check multiple fields. Just like here, we're checking the surname and forename field. So this is a limitation with the case statement, it just checks one field. But I still like it. There's not much more to explain about the case statements, but before we move on, I will just mention, just like with the if statement, case statements can be nested. So with our example, where we have when Smith, we could write out some text to the screen and then we could introduce another case statement. And we can choose to have a case statement on another field, include the when, just like so. Oops, I do apologise. That's better. So there you can see a nested case statement within the original case statement.